Welcome to this issue of the Wisdom of Whatcott. As folks would know who live in Canada, you're in the midst of a very important election right now. The federal election is on, and I guess voting day is October 19th. And I'd like to give my point of view as an exiled Canadian, exiled thanks to the homosexual mafia that destroyed my career. Nonetheless, I'm still certainly engaged in Canada. Oh, they also took me to the Supreme Court and landed me with a $7,500 fine and $100,000 worth of court costs. But in spite of that, I'm still following Canada and would like to comment according to my point of view, which is based on the Bible and my Christian faith. You have some choices to make. There's certainly your Prime Minister Harper. You could vote for him. Many Christians believe he is the guy to vote for, as they believe that he'll at least guide the economy with a modicum of wisdom, and maybe even if he's not a social conservative, at least prevent the worst of the socialist excesses. As I look at Harper, I think he comes up wanting on all fronts. He's certainly no friend of the unborn. He obstructed a motion within his own party to condemn partial birth abortion, a barbaric act that murders a baby in the mother's birth canal by penetrating the brain with a cannula and sucking the brains out to collapse the skull. Harper thought that even legislation or even a motion in his own party condemning such a barbaric form of infanticide would be too much. Then there was also, I believe, the Unborn Victims of Violence Act. He obstructed that by his backbencher, Rodney Bruinbridge, I believe his name was, an MP in Winnipeg, who had a Filipino lady murdered there because she would not murder her unborn child. And of course, the baby died in the homicide as well, but according to Canadian law, the child is of no consequence. I believe the murderer was convicted of killing his ex-girlfriend. That was about it. On the homosexual issue under Harper, we certainly had an open homosexual in his inner cabinet. His name was Jim Baird, I believe, and this fella actively traveled around the globe promoting homosexuality. So Canada, under the Harper government, has been an international promoter of homosexuality, and at home, Harper really hasn't been a great champion of freedom. We see that in his own party when he expelled Larry Spencer. Larry Spencer was a Baptist pastor, and in 2003 he made a comment. Actually, he responded to a reporter's question about whether he supported homosexual rights, and he said no, he did not support them. But that was about it. He wasn't picking any fight with homosexuals, but the media went into an uproar, and Larry Spencer under Harper was duly turfed out of the party, even though Larry Spencer did not engage in any kind of hate speech at all. Certainly not the kind of hate speech that Justin Trudeau would engage in. Let's go to Justin Trudeau now. Those are the reasons why I would not vote for Harper that I just articulated. Now, Justin Trudeau, he engaged in hate speech. You wouldn't know it because the media barely covered it. But back in, I think it was 2 years ago, 2013, during a question period, there was a fine elderly man, not really that elderly, about 70 years old, I believe. Let's see here, I got his name. Peter Kent. He was the Minister of Environment, and Trudeau got up and called him a piece of shit, which is an incredibly unprofessional and vulgar thing to do, certainly not befitting of a statesman. The media hardly said boo about it. Also, Trudeau has shown his intolerance by expelling all pro-lifers from his party. So we see he's a vulgar guy who uses vulgar language on people who are old enough to be his father. He had no respect for people who were pro-life in his party, and he expelled them. And on the environment, he's a complete lunatic. He wants to do what Kathleen Wynne did, which is put up windmills and solar panels all over the country, the most expensive form of energy, and basically discriminate against the oil industry, which is really the economic driver for all of Canada. Trudeau would do what basically Wynne did and put Canada into billions of dollars of debt in a state of energy insecurity. And he has said that pro-lifers are not allowed to run in his party. And, those reasons alone are enough to not vote for him. So certainly we can't vote for Trudeau. He's no friend of religious liberty. There's not a gay pride parade that he doesn't show up at. He marches in them. He poses with naked women. He's a pothead. Just not leadership material at all. Then we got Thomas Mulcair. Well, Thomas Mulcair back in 2002 said that he believed the Christian position on homosexuality, love the sinner, hate the sin, that's an illegal position. He articulated that during a question period, I guess, where it came to light that the Conservative Party of Canada gave a small grant to a ministry by the name of Crossroads. Now, Crossroads is not engaged in any kind of persecution of homosexuals. They don't do what Fred Phelps does, or they don't even do what I did. They don't even really talk about the issue much, but they do believe that it's a sin. What they were mainly focusing on and why they got this grant is they were feeding starving refugees, I believe in the Sudan, and trying to get them clean water. Anyways, Thomas Mulcair, he doesn't care about feeding starving refugees much. He just cared that Crossroads doesn't openly embrace homosexuality, and he said that was illegal, which he's wrong on. Canada's not that bad, thankfully, but it certainly shows his intolerant mindset. We also know from previous NDP governments in Ontario and BC, they were vigorous persecutors of Christians. I went to jail for 6 months under the NDP regime in Ontario, where they sent a special prosecutor to my case to make sure I got the maximum sentence under law for praying on a public sidewalk. Linda Gibbons, a fine woman who I know, she spent more than a decade in prison thanks to that same NDP sponsored injunction silencing peaceful protests on public sidewalks in front of mortuaries. Marion Boyd, the Attorney General of Bob Rae, under Bob Rae and the NDP in Ontario at the time, they were even slapping private citizens with lawsuits, citizens who did very little. One Ukrainian Catholic priest's wife, she would lay a rose once a month on the steps of Choice and Health Abortuary. Hardly an act of civil disobedience, hardly obstructive. It's just the pro-aborts noted it and they didn't like it, and she was slapped with a $500,000 lawsuit by the NDP. I don't believe they won, but the very fact that they would do that just tells you how tyrannical they are. And the BC NDP was no better. I had a friend of mine by the name of Sissy Van Den who was beaten up by some feminists, punched, kicked. They tried to steal her camera. There was many witnesses. The police wanted to charge the feminists. The NDP, being the lawless party it was, refused to charge this criminal. But they did throw a lady by the name of Mary Wagner into jail for simply standing on a sidewalk, encouraging women to choose life. So they were tyrannical towards peaceful protesters, and they actually defended violent protesters. I believe also the BC NDP ended the legacy of the Salvation Army Hospital because they would not kill babies in Vancouver, and I think they forced the hospital to close down rather than tolerate a faith-based hospital operating according to its conscience. So if either the Liberals or the NDP get in, Christians can expect out-and-out persecution, but mind you, there has been low-level persecution of Christians anyways under Harper. So what does that give you as an alternative? Well, I would promote the Christian Heritage Party of Canada. Even though I'm in the Philippines as an exile, I'm still a member of the Christian Heritage Party, and I still believe they have the answers for Canada. They're, unlike Harper, fiscally responsible. Harper has run up, I think, about $150 billion worth of debt, which is which is not chump change in the last few years of his rule. The Christian Heritage Party is truly committed to balanced budget. I believe Bill C-68 would be gone under the Christian Heritage Party. They support real firearm rights for real law-abiding Canadians. And certainly things like the Whatcott decision would be challenged by this party. They do believe in free speech for Christians. They believe Christians should participate in the public square. They do believe in natural marriage, unlike Harper, who once upon a time supported it but no longer does. And they would bring legal protection to the unborn. So my advice is, don't waste your vote on 3 socialist parties. Harper is a socialist party. He spends like a socialist. His social agenda has been mostly socialist. Trudeau would probably put us into a financial crisis on the level of Kathleen Wynne. He has the same economic ideas, and his social ideas are very similar as well. And then Mulcair and the NDP, they'd probably actually be the worst. Maybe not economically, because you got Trudeau, who is as much of a lunatic as the NDP. But you would see Christians in jail. You'd certainly see Christians banned from professions under the NDP. You'd see Christian hospitals closing, Christian ministries being persecuted. They would certainly be the worst for Christians. They'd also be a disaster economically. Right now, I believe Rachel Notley in Alberta is running up a deficit of $6,000 a minute. But in the eyes of the media, that's all good. That's far preferable than having anyone pro-family running the country and balancing budgets. But for Christians, you do have an alternative. Either run for them if you don't have a Christian Heritage Party member in your riding, or at least spoil your ballot in solidarity with them, because the other 3 are no good anyways. And that is the wisdom of Whatcott for tonight. Have a good night, and God bless. Bye-bye.